Shalom and welcome to another episode in our series called Picture This from Israel. Now, we've been here before, but I want us to imagine or picture Jesus teaching in this synagogue here at Magdala. Can you picture Jesus entering into this synagogue right there? What we're going to do in this episode is we're going to walk around the synagogue and try to imagine Jesus being here at this first century synagogue, one of maybe 7 or 8, depending on how you count them, in all of Israel. Let me show you that this synagogue was carefully excavated, and certainly we can see it displayed today. It was only found under about a foot or 14 inches of dirt, so very, very close to the surface. This synagogue was discovered. I had a chance before this was made into more of a display for tourists. I was able to sit on some of these benches. Our group we were invited by one of the archaeologists to very carefully walk into this synagogue, and it was a really honor to be able to do that. We walked in, we sat on these benches, and what we did was we listened to about a 15-minute lecture about the synagogue, its structure, how it was used. We do know from an inscription in Jerusalem found there, called the Theodotus inscription, that the 3 purposes of a synagogue in the first century were, number 1, to read the Torah, number 2, to teach the commands, and number 3, to offer hospitality to visitors. So let me just turn the camera around, and then we'll zoom in to different features of this synagogue. But look how modest and small, really, the synagogue is. Maybe 50, 60 people, perhaps, could fit around these 2 benches, and certainly there was a bench structure, an outer structure that you see here. But quite interesting that even though Magdala is only mentioned once in the Gospels, this is at the end of Mathew 15, Jesus sails into this port, one of 15 ports around the Sea of Galilee, and even though there's not a mentioning of him teaching in the synagogue, Matthew 4, Matthew 9, and other passages do tell us that he did teach in many of the synagogues in the Galilee. So let's zoom in to this structure and see it in a more detailed way. If we zoom in to the bench structure of this first century synagogue, we can see how well preserved it really is. Just imagine someone sitting here, perhaps on that bench, or on this bench on the east side, listening to Jesus teach. And as we saw already, this stone in the middle was where the scrolls were placed. Let's zoom in on this side of the stone as well. There we can see the amphora jars and the menorah. If we continue to walk around the other side, perhaps we can zoom into this mosaic here that surrounded apparently the entire bench structure, the inner bench structure. And look how detailed this is. The tesserae, the small mosaic pieces, are very, very carefully placed here. It's also now from this angle, looking more westward. Once again, this bench structure on this side. Picture Jesus perhaps being handed the scroll and then sitting down, sharing his interpretation of what he just read. I think this is a remarkable discovery. And thankfully, the hotel was built around it as to preserve what we see in front of us. Once again, picture Jesus walking in from this western side over that threshold into the synagogue. Perhaps here also people were wondering what he was about to teach. Every eye was upon him. He would have stepped down into this inner structure of the synagogue and then perhaps take his place right in front of this platform stone. Imagine the curiosity level, as Jesus now was known to be a messianic figure teaching something about this malchut shamayim, the kingdom. I think it's easy to picture Jesus here at Magdala. Let's zoom in also to this end of this platform stone. We can see the rosettes very clearly now, the decorative nature of this side. I think it really is easy to imagine Jesus teaching about the kingdom here. And his message must have been life-transforming to many. We do know that Mary Magdalene, who lived here, who was from here, her life was transformed by the ministry of Jesus. And as we also hear the message of the kingdom, our lives can be transformed too. Thanks for joining me for this episode here at Magdala in the first century synagogue. Until next time, shalom.